In a decision that took far too long, Red Bull have parted ways with Sergio Perez. As much as they want to put out fluff to save face with words like parting ways and going on sabbatical, the long and short of it is that Sergio either jumped before he was pushed or got fired and agreed to save face. You're not on a sabbatical at that point, you're just unemployed. Whichever it is, it's opened up a huge rift within the team, as the resulting vacancy saw the shock decision to promote Liam Lawson over Yuki Tsunoda, causing confusion and heartbreak among many of the Japanese drivers' fans. But was it really all that much of a shock? Don't get me wrong, Yuki on paper likely deserves the seat more, having been a long-serving driver for RB showing improvements on and off track, and above all else, Liam Lawson has only been in the car for a few races. Surely the risk of promoting a fairly unblooded driver could see Red Bull repeat, a critical mistake that has burnt many of their young drivers in the past. Well, it would appear that Red Bull are willing to take that risk, and one thing is for sure, Yuki Tsunoda is going to be furious. Want to know why Red Bull's decision could come back to haunt them? Yuki will be out for revenge, and it's safe to say that he might take his future into his own hands. So let's start off with a bit of context, shall we? After all, it's been a pretty stacked few days over in Milton Keynes. Sergio Perez and Red Bull reached an agreement to part ways, which basically means he was fired with strings attached. In all likelihood, he will secure severance from the team, seeing as he still had the remainder of his now regretful contract. Good job, Christian. And has announced that he will not be seeking a seat for the near future, meaning that he has a period where he can't race for anyone else in order to secure said severance. It's a sad way for the partnership between the driver and the team to end. After all, it hasn't all been bad, but an absolutely stinking 2024 really forced the team's hand here. So with the space opened up and nobody immediately announced, everyone was waiting for the likely follow-up announcement, who was going to be in the Red Bull seat for next season. Well, there were only ever going to be two options, and before any Ricciardo fans start foaming at the mouth, Red Bull would be better off trying to get Mika Hakkinen to return from his 2-decade sabbatical at this point, rather than break Daniel to an even further extent. Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson were the only two drivers that made sense, seeing as they were both the current drivers in the sister team, and a fair amount of signs pointed towards Tsunoda. A positive response to his post-season test in a Red Bull, his 4 years of experience, and his impressive highlights from last year all put across a fairly solid argument that he deserves the seat. There was nobody more convinced of this than Tsunoda himself, who a few months ago said this: "If they chose Liam, that would be weird. But I mean, for me at least, I don't think so. For sure, Liam did a really good job when he drove for the team, but I think I did more than that. We'll see how it goes. In the end, they know how to manage drivers." However, the sport which we all love doesn't necessarily promote drivers on merit alone. Before we get into this next bit, let me just say I'm a pretty big admirer of Liam Lawson, having watched him in F2 and the Super Formula, but I do have my worries about how quickly his promotion comes after his debut, and it could be something that Red Bull comes to regret. The Milton Keynes team has a track record of breaking young drivers and tossing them away, and I just hope that they aren't sending Lawson to the slaughter hastily rather than giving him the proper time to develop and hone his skills. Which, yeah, come to think of it, Yuki wasn't exactly correct about Red Bull knowing how to manage their drivers, was he? Then again, Red Bull may already have their eyes on 2026 and beyond, with them seeing 2025 as a year for Lawson to break himself in prior to the regulation change. Max has single-handedly fought for constructors before, and realistically for 19 of the 24 races last season, plus the sprint races, he was doing so anyway, so Red Bull will likely see the second seat as being better used to host a young and hungry driver from the Red Bull Academy who may well become a great driver in his own right, rather than trying to resuscitate Sergio Perez after round 5 for the 3rd season in a row. The other thing to consider is that his youth and comparative inexperience makes him a hell of a lot less likely to clash with Max. The 22-year-old Kiwi's statement following his announcement exemplified why Red Bull will be more willing to take a risk on him, with the statement reading, "To be announced as an Oracle Red Bull Racing driver is a lifelong dream for me. This is something I've wanted and worked towards since I was 8 years old. It's been an incredible journey so far. I want to say a massive thank you to the whole team at VCarb for their support. The last 6 races have played a huge part in my preparation for this next step. I also want to thank Christian, Helmut, and the whole Red Bull family for believing in me and giving me this opportunity. I am super excited to work alongside Max and learn from a world champion. I have no doubt that I will learn from his expertise. I can't wait to get going." Which, I mean, when you compare that with Yuki saying, "Obviously I'm feeling ready compared to the last 3 years to fight against top teams, higher positions, even with Max or whatever." You can certainly see that Lawson is less likely to rock the boat at the main team while also displaying a boatload of potential himself, with the team hoping that if Verstappen does indeed step away for whatever reason, that a season of learning will be enough to prepare Lawson for the big leagues. But with all that said, just because we can understand the reasons why Lawson was promoted ahead of Yuki doesn't mean that Yuki and his fans will. I personally would love to see Yuki in a competitive car at the front of the field because he would be lightning quick and not afraid to upset anyone. But that last point is the exact reason why we think there could be a storm coming at RB and Red Bull. Yuki likely won't play nice in the media pen or on track, and truth be told, we think that he could be ready to burn some bridges. The real reason, above all else, that he hasn't been picked is because he is not a true Red Bull junior. He is a Honda factory driver who was drafted into the Red Bull family with their engine deal. And now that Honda has no sway at Red Bull to make up some early attitude issues and outspoken nature, Yuki didn't really stand a chance. However, just because he has been snubbed for this seat doesn't mean that he is doomed to stay at RB forever. Yuki is only 24 and has nearly a century of race starts under his belt. Notably, and most obviously, Honda's move to take over engine production at Aston Martin, making them pretty much the Honda Works team, creates an exciting opportunity for Tsunoda come 2026. Alonso has flip-flopped for a while, and Stroll can decide to leave whenever he feels bored enough, so which seat Yuki could jump into remains an unknown, but it seems the most destined path for the young Japanese driver. It'd be the ultimate slap in the face to Red Bull for snubbing him if he was to join the team whose engine manufacturer abandoned them and forced them into taking on an unproven engine program. This ended up ludicrously risky and costly. And if Aston hit the ground running in the new regulations with Tsunoda at the wheel and they start beating Red Bull, then the scenes would be absolutely unreal. A change of environment would certainly make sense for Tsunoda, and in all honesty, Red Bull have given him ample reason not to stay. Having been consistently overlooked, undervalued, and seen as a journeyman to compare Red Bull heirs in waiting to, Yuki will likely feel that it's about time he received his flowers. There are aging drivers across the grid in teams of multiple levels, so biding his time for the time being would certainly make sense. But then again, Yuki hasn't always been the most patient driver now, has he? We really want Lawson to work out in the Red Bull just as much as we want to see Tsunoda be given an opportunity in better equipment than he has received in the recent years. But as a 24-year-old recently learned, I want doesn't get. But what do you think? Will Lawson prove to be the right choice for Red Bull? Do you think that Tsunoda doesn't even deserve to be angry about the decision, having had ample time to make himself unignorable? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.